I'm the host of Think Out Loud on OPB. I'm thrilled to see all of you here, and there are, for the folks standing up, there are plenty of seats if you'd rather sit, or you can stand, either way. How many of you have heard our show on the radio before? Cool, well, so for those of you, that's not exactly true. But I like the spirit of that. No, you should listen to all kinds of radio stations. So, for those of you who haven't heard our show or don't know much about what we do, normally we are a show out of a studio in Portland. We've been on the air since 2008, and in that time, we've done our best to get all around Oregon and to do shows everywhere. We were here about 2 months ago doing a couple shows, and we've really tried hard to report from Eastern Oregon and Central Oregon and Southern Oregon, so we're not just in our studio, so we can actually understand the issues that really affect people's daily lives. It's one thing to talk to somebody on the phone, but it's another to spend time with them at their business, at their ranch, in a coffee shop, in a library, in a jail, all over. So that's what brought us here today. Obviously what brought us here now, in addition to the general idea of getting out into communities all around the state, is it's now been about 2 months since the end of the occupation, and that's what we wanted to. As many of you may know, we were going to be a part of a community meeting that was canceled because of security concerns, and I'm really happy that we can be here now with all of you. So a few logistical details. If you haven't turned your cell phones off yet, now is a perfect time to do it. You can keep them on, I guess, and put them on silent, or just turn them off. We're going to keep you well entertained, or you'll keep me well entertained for the next hour. What else can I tell you? We're going to take one break about halfway through. We're going to. This is probably going to air on Monday at noon, and it'll air on the radio. There's a rebroadcast at 8 p.m. It also is available for download, and you can stream it on our website. So if in case friends of yours or family, if you want to have other people listen to this who can't hear it on the radio, there are many other ways that you can listen to it. Do you guys have any questions about the show or anything before we start? Just shout it out. No. Okay, so a few other things. We've done probably 40 shows over the years, maybe more, in front of audiences, community kind of conversations like this. And I think this is the second time that we've done one in which I was the only person facing the audience that we want to hear from. Almost always, the way we would do it is I would be up there with a couple other seats there and a couple other microphones there, and then we'd have the important people of the county or the city or the whatever up there with me, and then we'd hear a lot from them, and then we'd hear a little bit from you all in the audience. And we thought about doing that today because it makes me feel like there's a security blanket. It's less terrifying. But we didn't want to do that. The reason we're here is basically to hear from all of you. We also want to hear from some of the important people, elected officials, and other important people from this area who played roles in everything that happened over the last few months, and we will hear from them. But the way this is going to work, if this is going to work, is Stephen's going to do something here. The way it's going to work is if you all just feel free. Oh, there's a buzz. Yeah, this man is an audio genius, by the way. Anyway, so it only works if you all feel comfortable enough to throw your hands up and to make sure that our two mic runners. It's Amanda Peacher, who is our Central/Eastern Oregon correspondent, an amazing reporter who has interviewed a number of you over the last few months. She has the mic to say, where's Sage?
Sage, she'll be here.
Okay, and the executive producer of our show, the leader of our show, who is not here at this moment, she too should be here soon, and she has a mic as well. So basically, this is maybe a ridiculously obvious point, but if you have to wait for the mic to get to you, because otherwise only the people in this room will hear you and hear your point and hear your point of view. Nobody else in the rest of Oregon will hear it. So just raise your hand, they'll find you. We'll do our best to get as many points of view in as we go. And that's basically it. How many of you, by the way, are ready right now with questions or comments or things that you want to get off your chest? Just throw your hands up. So only a handful. All right. My hope is that that many of you will do that, because that's why we're here. We honestly want to know what's going on in your lives, how you're doing right now, how you think Harney County is doing right now, and Burns is doing now, what your hopes are, what your fears are, how the occupation affected you, or maybe it didn't affect you. We'd like to hear that as well. So just, I urge you to throw your hands up and feel a part of this conversation. That's why we're here. You are why we're here. Do we know where Sage is?
Yeah, she's coming in.
Okay. So now we're going to have an awkward silence for a minute and a half.
Why
Yeah.
wasn't this advertised more?
Why wasn't this advertised more?
Someone told me about it, and I did look on the forum, the Harney County Forum, and it had it listed today, but I don't think a lot of people knew about this.
Yeah.
That's probably our fault. We put this on our website and our Facebook page, I think just last week, maybe. We're a daily show, and we're always running to get the shows ready for the next day. And we announced this on the air starting, I think, at the end of last week, or maybe even just on Monday. It had been on our Facebook page a week before that. So I don't have a great answer for you. We just, besides the fact that we move really quickly, and it's maybe a different schedule than a normal community meeting in terms of scheduling. So sorry about that. I'm glad you found out about it.
Well, I think more people would come if they'd have known.
Yeah, that's possible. I know that we're also competing with a couple other events at the very same. Our executive producer, the leader of our show, she too will get the mics to you. Well, let's just jump right in, and this is something that I'd love to hear from a number of you on. You know, apropos of the timing and the scheduling, when we announced this on our Facebook page, we got a lot of comments from people, and I got an email just yesterday from someone saying it's too early. We don't want to have folks coming to town, stirring things up, and talking about all this stuff right now. You can come and do this, but don't do it now. We got that from a number of people. Does anybody in this room agree with that? Why not? I mean, why is, yes?
Well, I just really feel that we're just starting to talk again and communicate. And I feel that sometimes when outsiders come in, they ask questions maybe not, I don't know, maybe as sensitive as sometimes you need to, because sometimes you know some people maybe be on the other side of the issue, but you're just starting to be able to talk to them again about it. And so sometimes that brings up, you know, some anger in people that can't hold their anger real well, and brings up some of those sensitive things on their nerve, maybe they're very compassionate about. I feel like we're just starting to come together and being able to talk to people on the other side of the issues, and maybe they weren't totally on the other side, like, you know, on one way or the other, but some of those hardcore issues you weren't able to talk to them about. It was just too raw.
And now you are, so what does it look like if you're talking to someone, you yourself, who's on the other side, somehow the other side of this issue?
Right. I just feel like we as a community are a strong community, and we can pull through this, and we don't need a lot of outsiders to try and help mend fences. A lot of us have lived here all of our lives. We've known each other forever, and good, very close friends that are on the other side of the issue. And we can work through it and get through it, but it's something that I think we as a community have to work at. And we have to be able to go and visit with other people that strongly felt and find out what their compassionate was and let them be able to understand where my compassion comes from. And I know that we can come together and come out of this stronger and come with some great solutions of things that do need to happen.
Who else feels that now you're starting to talk again, to talk with neighbors and friends?
Oh, no. He just said who else
Yeah.
feels like we're just beginning to speak, and we are. There's been, there's just, it's starting to come back together a little bit at a time. And I know a lot of people are nervous about it coming up in a real big way, and making that go backwards, taking those steps back, because nobody wants that.
Including us, I should
Yeah.
add.
I know, yeah, I knew that, yeah.
But it's worth saying that. I should also say that we didn't come here to mend fences. That's not the way, as a show, we view our role. It's more to understand what the community is going through. What is it that has made it so that now you're starting to talk again?
Because that's what our town does. We have always been, I've been here since '89, and we don't always agree on everything. Never have, never will. We're humans. But we've always found a way to work around it. And that's what I think we're starting to do again, is look at our neighbors that we didn't necessarily agree with and say, you're more important than my views. And so I'm not going to shove my views down your throat. And I'm just going to respect you as a person and get on with it. Let's get on with life.
Now, both of you so far have been talking about talking, which makes me think that you mean people in person with each other. One of the things that we've heard from some of the earlier community meetings that got very heated in January was so many people from every side talking about social media forums, Facebook and other places where things, because there was some kind of anonymity or even not, but it was just people at computer screens, and that's where things got, it seems, a lot uglier than they were in person. Sir, what's your name?
Lewis Smith. I've been here since I was born here, all right? And this community wasn't talking. That was the problem, all right? Not to everybody, just to certain people. And it's like, today, everybody's talking. Everybody's going to meetings, different meetings that they would never go to because they have a concern now, all right? It actually opened up a big door. And I think that the door needs to stay open, and that door opened up because of the media, That's, and it's been some good, healthy stuff going on for the community. Some people don't think it's that way, think that we need to shut everybody out and keep everybody out. We're part of the world. We're just not Harney County. We are a whole part of it. We send our families, our kids go all over, to colleges outside of this country. They've got to be able to feel like that they got a place to come back to.
When you say that people weren't talking before with each other, you mean before the occupation there were disagreements, but they were what, beneath the surface?
Pretty much beneath the surface, yes. Yeah.
Does that ring true to other people here? Let's get a mic to the gentleman in the back with the cowboy hat. Sir, what's your name?
I'm Todd Applegate. I'm from Vail, Oregon, actually, and we're a small town also, and we're next door in the next county, and they're talking about bringing in a monument to our county, 2.5 million acres. When we're talking about a small town, I think he's right. Our town too. You had this meeting 3 months ago, and there would have been 6 people here. But now, this is the people wanting to talk on both sides, which is great. We had, we had a teen suicide in our town, a month ago, and if people talked, we maybe could have, prevented that. But unfortunately, these small towns, we gotta welcome people. They're not outsiders. We're a town of 1,200. If you don't welcome people in, your town's going down. I mean, if we kick our ranchers out, I like hamburger. You know, we need to keep them. You know, but the small towns, we need to open up. Well, this is great. It's great to see people turning out, but I totally agree that 3 months ago, it wouldn't happen. You know, you wouldn't have had the show in Vail or Burns or one of these small towns had anybody here. So I'm glad to see people opening up a little bit, you know, because we need to. These small towns, we need to open up. Everybody's too closed up, and we could prevent a lot of things and solve a lot of problems within our own towns. When in these small towns, we recognize people who come into our county who are outsiders. It's obvious, you know. So
How do you know?
well, they're people
You don't
are born
recognize
here.
them?
People are born. You
Yeah.
bet. Yeah, absolutely.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I walked into the courthouse in Portland 2 days ago with a cowboy hat on, and he said, "Are you here for the Bundy trial?" Absolutely.
Yeah.
We know when people walk in our
You're
town.
saying it
they're
goes
not
both
going to-
ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sir, what's your name?
Jesse Stakar. I just want to reiterate what these guys said. I mean, yeah, it got a lot of people talking. I think all of us were afraid to bring things up early on, but I think the reasonable people in this town who've been friends for years, in spite of their differences, I have friends that I could disagree with on 99 out of 100 things, the occupation being one of them, and they probably couldn't even guess where I stand on it, but they'll make an assumption. But the reasonable people were still willing to sit down and have a conversation and get along and agree to disagree like they always have. You know, this just brought out some of the people who are, maybe can't contain their emotions quite as easily, or people who aren't used to getting as riled up as they did in this event. I think, at least from what I've seen, from my perspective of people on both sides, I see a lot of positive things happening right now.
What's an example of a positive thing you see happening right now?
For me, you know, I've been here my whole life, not very long, but 28 years. I've never seen this much interest in a local election. Now, there may be some people that don't think that's a good thing. Frankly, I like choices. And I'll tell you right now, I'm very happy with just about everyone running for office right now. No matter how it turns out, it's going to be great, in my opinion, because we have people involved. Normally, it's run unopposed, or maybe one person running, but the whole town knows who's going to get elected anyways. That still may be the case with more people running, but at least we've got choices. We've got people excited. We've got people supporting different candidates than their neighbor, and they're still going out shaking hands with the person they're not supporting, because they're still friends. So, you know, yeah, that's all I have to say.
If you're just tuning in, this is Think Out Loud on OPB, coming to you from the Harney County Fairgrounds in Burns. It has been about 2 months since the end of the occupation of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. Harney County Judge Steve Grasty is here. He is one of those people who has run in the past for elected office, but is not going to be running right now. Is not running right now. You're done now as of what, 8 months from now. Have you seen, you have a little bit more experience than the gentleman we just heard. Have you seen an election that has this much excitement?
Absolutely. The first time I ran, 1998, there was 8 candidates for county judge. So it has happened before, but I think it's great. I also agree with what Jesse said. Having a slate is a good thing. It's good for the community. It's opened up debate that didn't happen otherwise. I think that's the difference that I see today coming out of things. First, I heard somebody say we wouldn't have had this kind of turnout 4 months ago. Not in Harney County is true. We had in this room, when the first sage grouse meeting started, we had 250 people in here. It's pretty norm for us to turn out and express our feelings. I will say the difference I see today, for one, at a county court meeting, we'd have 4 people maybe. Now we have 30. That's a good thing. I don't like talking, just like you don't like being up there by yourself. I don't like talking to the wall. I like talking to people and like their input. So I think that's been helpful.
How do you account for that? Because the issues that were brought up to a great extent by the occupiers, I mean, their beef, obviously, was about federal oversight, federal, they would say, overreach. But you're talking about more interest in county politics.
So I'd say it differently. More interest in county government administration. That's what the county court does day to day. And that turnout, we don't hear the angst, we don't hear in a county court meeting, we don't hear, hey, you got to get out there and do something about the BLM. We don't hear, get out there and do something about USDA. We talk through the topics, we hear some input. Currently we hear some criticism from the candidates about budgets, but that's a norm. I think I did it years ago. So it's a norm to hear those kind of things. It's a good thing. People are looking at it. So what I see is us talking about different topics or the same topics in a different way. And I think that's a win out of these events that's happening. And I think it is drawing this community back together slowly, but I think we are getting there.
We talked a number of times in January and February. You're making a face like it was too many times. You weren't always thrilled. You were going through a lot at that time as the chief executive for the county. Looking back now, what's the big takeaway you have from that entire episode?
So, Dave, I want to correct you on something you said a minute ago, and then I'll try and answer that. You talked about the important people being up there. See all these folks behind me? Those are the important people, not the guys in the front row. It's those are the folks that this is about. And that's what's important to me.
But is that a new lesson?
Absolutely not. Never has been for me. I work for these folks. Like me, don't like me, doesn't matter. I work for these folks, and I'm going to keep working hard at that. The takeaway out of this is that we weren't talking to each other enough. Bundy didn't know it. Some of us didn't know how successful we were. The High Desert Partnership, the collaboration, the relationships that we built, we didn't know that. And it's because, and I take blame for it as a leader in this community, that we weren't saying that enough. We're doing a better job today of it.
Sheriff Dave Ward is right next to you, the Harney County Sheriff. Sheriff Ward, good to have you here.
Thank you.
At the end of the occupation, you called for people in a very emotional, short speech, the only emotional speech at this press conference, following very dry, sort of by-the-book comments by the head of the FBI in Oregon, by somebody from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Then you came on with real emotion, saying, it's time for this community to talk to each other, to get off sniping on Facebook. Do you think that's happened?
I don't Facebook. So.
Kids these days.
Yeah. I got rid of all that back in November.
Really?
So.
Good timing. 2 months before the occupation.
Honestly, I don't have TV either. Netflix with the kids sometimes, but.
Just OPB on the radio.
Honestly, I'm not here to criticize anybody because I've got friends on both sides of the fence, and in most cases we agree on more than we disagree on. But I think that people do a lot better when they sit down and talk face to face. You cannot read tone in an email or a Facebook post. You can't read body language. You can't look and see if your comment has hurt your friend or your neighbor. And it hurt me to see my friends going back and forth at each other throughout this thing. So I live in this community because I like living here, and I love the people that are in it. And so to see that go through such a turbulent time as it did, while there's a lot of positive that can come out of this, absolutely, that door is wide open right now, and I think people are listening. And so it's absolutely the opportune time to get your feelings out there. But I think it's so much better to do it in person than it is to do it via text or anything like that.
It's an interesting position, bully pulpit that you're taking right now. I mean, you're as the chief law enforcement officer for the county. You're in charge of the jails, in charge of going after people who break the law. But what you're talking about now is a kind of a touchy-feely kind of thing. We should all, whether we agree or disagree, we should talk to each other. It's an interesting thing for a sheriff to be emphasizing.
Well, I don't think we're ever going to have a utopian society, but I do believe that we can all do a better job of communicating with each other. And, you know, well, that'd make my job easier.
What were you going through personally during those 41 days?
I had a lot of stress and anxiety. Not a lot of other places have gone through a similar situation. So there wasn't a ton of advice floating around out there. And it was a learning experience. I never liked school, so we can imagine how that felt. I felt like I was sitting in the classroom every day. And
What did you learn?
you know what? I learned that there's a lot of folks out there that are angry about a lot of different things, and that when you have an emotional spark like that, it all can come to the surface, which is good, because I've talked to a lot of people that got stuff off their chest and feel better. You know, and at the same time, I think there's a whole lot more that needs to come out on the table. We all need to sit down together and kick it around and work towards some solutions.
So that's the sheriff. I'm curious from everybody else, what were you going through personally while this was happening? Sir, what's your name?
My name is Son Burns, and no relation to the founder of the town. The one thing that I've found really interesting, I Facebook a lot, and the one thing I found out before the occupation and during the occupation, there was a lot of opining and emoting, and a lot of people getting a lot of their angers and frustrations out, whether it was at each other or either for or against the occupation. But what I've found since, and what I've tried to do myself as I post stuff, is education. I'm a middle school math teacher here in town, and that's what I've, through all of this, has given me focus in trying to educate myself on national issues in terms of land management and how it affects us here in Harney County, and educate people about the issues at on a broader global scale, and try to turn it into a positive in that way in terms of education, educating each other. I've heard, you know, we don't always agree, but as long as we're willing to educate each other and try to stay objective about it, I think it can turn into something positive. So.
The one big difference is that your students have no choice but to be there and be educated by you. But the people out there in Facebook land or in the store have no such requirement. They don't have to be educated by you.
Right, I mean, everybody's got that choice. But I think what we really have to look at is, are we doing each other a disservice by not trying to get ourselves as educated as possible? I don't know much about ranching. When I first moved out here, that was my goal, was to ranch and be a teacher, and that was it. After I got married, that kind of went downhill, but that's okay. But, you know, I've had ranchers' kids that come in through my classrooms, and I can tell you these ranchers out here work hard. And they are what is keeping this community together. And I think that we have to support them, but I know that there are other, you know, we, in this community, it's, a lot of it's ranching, and a lot of it is government work. You know, the Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife, ODFW, they're a big presence out here as well. And what I hear on Facebook and what I hear from talking to both sides is there's a lot of collaboration, I think, that does go on behind the scenes. And I think that needs to be the focus, is how can we collaborate and help each other out for the benefit of all.
Thank you. Sir, in the back, what's your name?
Yeah, I'm Larry J. I've lived here in Burns quite a long time. There's Steve Rasting. Anyway, the question I have was for the sheriff. He said he was really upset and really down about what happened during the time of that. But then I seen a video on there where he was out dancing and having a good time after that killing. I can't see where that is called a person that really, after you just kill somebody, to be out there doing something like that, and then state, like you just stated, that he was down where he was at. It was really terrible. That's one question I have for him.
Let's stick with that question, Sheriff Ward, do you want to respond?
Well, I wasn't celebrating anyone's death. That death was tragic. I believe a lot of people worked very hard to avoid any violent outcome during this deal. The dancing that is in question was, some people were kind enough to put together a law enforcement appreciation night. It was planned weeks in advance, and yeah, I like a good song. Thank you.
We got another comment from our audience. Sir, what's your name?
Tony Atencio. He said it was like an appreciation to law enforcement. I'd just like to know what the appreciation was for. Was it for the occupation takeover and how they stood their ground and did their thing, or was it for the killing of Lloyd Finnegan?
Sheriff Ward?
No, nobody was celebrating the death of anyone. Thank you.
All right, we've got to take a quick break. We have a lot more coming up from our audience. We're also going to hear from the two federal agencies that drew a lot of the criticism from the occupiers. Stay tuned. This is Think Out Loud on OPB. If you're just tuning in, we're coming to you from the Harney County Fairgrounds in Burns. We're talking about what life is like here about 2 months after the armed occupation of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge ended. Chad Cargis is one of the people in our audience, manager of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. Good to have you here. Thank you. Can you tell us what those 41 days were like for you?
They were exhausting. All the staff was displaced from the community. I was working out of the regional office in Portland and trying to, manage the workforce remotely and make sure the employees were safe. Took a lot of extra time and energy.
What was it like to not be there?
There was always a question in your mind as to what was really occurring. You would see what was coming out, on the news media and those types of mechanisms. But
how much of that did you watch?
I reached a point where I kind of quit watching that. Not necessarily because I wasn't interested. It was just there was just so much of it. There's just no way to track all of it.
What was it like to have all of that happening and to not really be able to talk too much to members of the media or the public? All of you were kept pretty mum.
And there was different reasons for that, but I think lots of employees within the Fish and Wildlife Service were frustrated by not being able to tell at least our side of the story.
If you had a chance to do that, what would you have said?
I think there's a lot of good things going on in this community. I think there was an overall image of division and negative things that was presented by the media. And, it's just frustrating to me that, like the High Desert Partnership and the collaboration, that all that's been going on for, a decade plus. And that just wasn't out there to the public. And, I really would have liked to talk about that at that point.
How do you think the occupation affected those partnerships? Ones that had been, when they started, they were parties who didn't have a lot in common, didn't have a lot of mutual trust. Did any of that get frayed by the media attention and the emphasis on division?
No, I think it actually strengthened those relationships. Those collaborative conversations were occurring during the occupation. They were just in another location. And so those conversations never stopped just because of the occupation. And now that, we have attention, now we have that opportunity to tell that positive story.
What was it like when you went back to the refuge headquarters for the first time?
It's just kind of a sense of what are you going to see? That's what it was like for me. And, different employees came back in different stages. And so it just depends on, when each individual employee, went back as to what it would be like for them.
Can you actually tell us what the High Desert Partnership is? It's something we've talked about on the show in the past, but Not everybody in our listening audience may be familiar with it.
The High Desert Partnership it's a place-based grassroots group. It's a nonprofit that provides a safe, neutral forum for collaborative conversations for people to come together to figure out creative solutions to some of the issues we've been dealing with for a long time.
So, what did you find when you went back to the refuge? You were nervous about what you were going to find. What did it look like to you?
It was just a mess. It's kind of the best way to describe it. Just a lot of garbage and things were broken, that type of thing.
Jeff Rose is here as well, right next to you, Associate District Manager for the Bureau of Land Management here, the BLM. What were the 41 days like for you?
It was stressful, I think was the best way to put it, and the uncertainty of just what the next day would bring was kind of hard to just sit there and anticipate.
What were individual days like? I mean, you didn't know what to expect, but what was happening?
When we didn't, our folks stayed in town for the most part, and we were trying to conduct business from our homes. So it was a lot of phone calls to each other, trying to keep things going. We're trying to meet deadlines that we had. The BLM has things coming up in the springtime. We were trying to get folks ready to turn out, get the permittees out, get processes going, pay bills, take money in, all the things that we usually normally do. Just we tried to do them not outside the office.
Was there talk about leaving town or leaving the county?
I think there was, we gave folks the option if they felt uncomfortable that they could leave. But most of them said they wanted to stay and you know, they're part of the community, they want to stay in the community and be here.
One of the themes that I think that if you listen to the occupiers, it may have seemed like BLM land managers, that everything comes from DC, that everybody who works for the BLM is basically in Washington, DC. You've been working for the BLM here for 16 years. How would you describe your relationship to this community?
I think it's good. I think I consider myself part of the community, which helps. And being here a while, you build a lot of relationships with all kinds of people. You see them everywhere. And when new folks come in, I try to explain to them, you know, you come to town, especially in a small town, it's BLM 24/7. You're always on, and it's great. I love my job. I'll do it all the time. If you want to talk to me at a basketball game, I'm more than happy to talk about BLM.
Does that happen?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What might someone say to you at a high school basketball game?
Well, you come in, and you may have a permittee come in and talk about a reservoir that needs work, or you may have a cattle guard that needs to be fixed, or you may have maybe time to move from one pasture to the next, and they're saying, hey, I need to do this, or this needs to happen.
Has anybody in the audience done that at the supermarket or at a basketball game? Let's hear. So how would you describe your relationship with the BLM?
I'm Shauna Withy, and in my personal job, I'm a professor at Oregon State University, and I have people ask me questions all the time at the grocery store, at the Little League field. You know, how do we do this with our 4-H project? What kind of food do you eat? We know everybody. It's not we talk about things in our lives all the time with each other at different locations. Sports are big in this community. The grocery store is a real meeting place. Big R has a nice facility to visit with your neighbor. It's a small town.
I feel like I missed a joke there. But that's fine, I'm not from here. I can't know all the in-jokes. Why was that funny though?
Feed store.
The feed store. Okay, I still don't totally get the joke.
Local mall.
Alcohol.
Local mall.
Local mall. The feed store is a local mall.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
You meet your friends there.
That's where you meet your friends. You had raised your hand earlier saying that you would talk BLM things at basketball games. Did I misunderstand you?
Yeah, I run a small ODOT grant for traffic safety for kids in Harney County aged 0 to 18. And my office is actually out of the Burns Police Department. They are great gracious enough to allow me to have an office for free. And so I do also see everyone around town that needs a car seat or a helmet, but I was also in the office when this was all going down, and it was very traumatic and very stressful. And I just want to say that the law enforcement in this area, they went through a incredibly hard time since early December, and they did an amazing job. Thank you.
There are a lot of nods in the audience. Jeff Rose, so you talked about how you have a 24/7 job. You're always representing the BLM wherever you are. Do you think that the occupation changed anything about the way you view your role in the community?
I don't think it changed anything. I think it helped us focus on some things. The BLM, after the occupation, when we came back to work, the employees got together and said, we want to do something. We want to re-engage with the community. We essentially were absent for 41 days. And so they got together and they started doing things. They started going out. In the past, we would go out and visit groups or talk to people about specific projects. And now we're going out and talking to them just about the BLM and about what we do and how we do things and how can they engage with us, and then also listening to what they have to say for us. So we've done some things. We're trying to do some things different. We're trying to do some things that we've done in the past, maybe doing better.
So it seems like on some level, the cries from the occupiers made a difference. Among other things, they were saying, we want the federal government to be more responsive to us. They had many other concerns, but that's one part of it. And it seems like you're saying that locally, you are more responsive now.
I think it gave us a way to tell our story. We wanted to tell our story after the occupation, and now we have the opportunity to do that. And a lot of things we do, we need input to do that. We need help to do our things, help to make decisions, and us going out and doing this, again. And folks are right. Sometimes we'd hold a meeting and it'd be 3 people. I think Steve talked about how that is. It's tough when you're doing that. And now hopefully we can get folks engaged.
Now, getting better at telling your story and communicating the BLM's point of view is different than saying that you now have a different understanding of the way you should be putting forward federal policies in terms of land management. Has that changed at all? Do you have at all a different idea of the way you should actually deal with ranchers?
I don't think it's, I don't know. I don't know, Dave. I'll have to think about that. I think we're trying to do the best job we always can do, and everything's a learning experience. Every day's a day at school, like Dave said. So I think take what we learned, apply it, get better.
I see somebody here who wants to jump in. Georgia Marshall, who has been on our show in the past. What do you want to say?
Hi, Dave, you asked the question about our relationship with the BLM here in Harney County and what it's been like. And my family has ranched here since probably the 40s, and our current ranch has been in our family for nearly 50 years. And we have several allotments that we run on. And a lot of your allotments, your permit it depends on the environment where it's located. If you've got critical issues within that allotment that might be a habitat, a year-round stream or something could be a critical issue, or endangered species or a threatened species, which can make it a little more difficult to have to do your management within. But we have always found, for us personally, we've had a very good relationship with the BLM, that we've had good people overall to work with. And we ourselves engage in our allotment plan. We don't just say, okay, we'll come in and you tell us what we're going to be doing. We come in with a plan that we'll ask them, would this work this year? Are we able to, you know, increase numbers, or could we get a water hole cleaned out or a well drilled? You know, we will offer something there, and us as land users have to do that. We have to take an active part in it. We just can't go in and always be critical of every little thing. So as long as you're taking part in your allotment plan, knowing what's going on, and when you have to cut back numbers because of drought, then we take the first step and say, okay, we realize this is a brittle environment, we realize this is going to be an issue this year, so we will cut back some numbers, or we will rest allotments, and we work a lot with how to make it work together. We don't just wait for them to come to us. So you have to be an active member of that plan. And we're thankful too for all the expertise that's there, that when we have questions, we have ecologists we can go to, we have archaeologists we can go to, we have fire experts we can go to that can help us mitigate problems coming up, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. Sir, another comment. What's your name?
Travis Williams, fifth generation rancher in the county. Talk about relationships with the BLM. We have a great relationship with the BLM, always have. Yeah, there's differences, but we come together. You don't stay on the same place for 5 generations and make it work. And during the occupation, I guess I went on the far side, and I understood what Ammon was saying and bit into it and understood what he was trying to say. And since then, I've educated myself, which takes twice as long as most people, because I'm not real good at that. But a lot of driving into town. I live 45 miles away from here. But what I found, I've seen collaboration go on for generations through my dad and grandfather. And all you're getting is the crumbs off the table. You're not meeting real good. I'd like to see more of a coordination where both parties are meeting on the same plane. And I think that's what Ammon was trying to get to. So I believe there's strength in that. And I really think that we're in a position as a community and as a county, and all 11 western states are going through this, the same thing right now. I mean, this is a big deal. And since we've seen the flames die down, we're able to kind of see through the smoke, and I see some great things going to happen.
What did you learn? You said that you went through a period where you really learned things. What is that?
Like through now there's so much of it I really can't pinpoint. I didn't bring any notes or anything.
That's fine.
But like with coordination, as a producer, it's frustrating to see Honda or some other groups come in and jump on board on trying to make the biggest wilderness area out of the Hawaii Canyon lands, 1.6 million acres, whatever it is. And the BLM's not right behind you as a producer. I know they have rules, and we're willing to work through that and eventually get through that. But it's very frustrating. So I think, you know, if there's some way through coordination, not collaboration, because they are different. Look it up in the dictionary and get online and you'll see it. So I really think there needs to be more of a push that the ranchers do have rights out there on that land. They're just not permits, they're allotments.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, what's your name?
Mark Owens. I'd like to change the conversation to the future of Harney County. We've all seen what's happened in the past. We can take that and change it to the future. I think Harney County has great opportunity, but with great opportunity comes great challenges. And one of the great challenges that we're going to face as a community is how to figure out how to get more local control over our ground and our natural resources. Instead of all the decisions being made in Washington, D.C., how we can enable our local BLM, local Forest Service, and local ranchers to have a lot more control on what happens with the drought, with being proactive on trying to utilize our natural resources. I think it'll be a great challenge, but with that challenge, we can have a great opportunity.
So what's the model that you see? I mean, describe the Harney County of the future that you want.
The Harney County of the future I want, the creation of a new dollar through the better utilization of natural resource, through the betterment of multi-use natural, and not multi-use public lands. It has to be public lands, but I think we need more of a local input on how those lands are managed.
What about other kinds of economic development that's not tied only, I mean, it seems like you're focusing specifically there on land use questions and the vast tracts of federally managed land here, but what about other ideas for economic opportunities in Harney County?
Let me take that one.
Sure, and then we can hear from other people as well.
The better off, I've always had the philosophy, the better off my neighbor does, the better off I do. I'm very pro-agriculture, but I'm very pro what happens in town. We have to have a balance in our community with creating jobs in the agriculture sector and creating jobs in town and business. We have to have family wage jobs so we can provide economic growth for both sectors.
How hopeful are folks in this room about the things you just heard about, whether we're talking about getting more local control over federal lands or a broader vision of economic development here? How hopeful are you about the future of Harney County? Let's, well, you've just spoken. Let's get a new voice. We have a woman on the corner. We'll get a mic to you. What's your name?
Liz Appleman. I've lived here about 60 years, and I'm a retired BLM employee, so I've seen both sides of it. I think there's a lot of things the future is for this area, but it's not going to be based on production, near as I can figure. It's going to be more like a internet type of program. I think we need to use our resources better, and I think we need to talk, as everybody said. But in the years I've been here, we've seen a lot of things go by the wayside simply because those things are no longer available, and that's countrywide, that's not just here. And I think this county will survive and do well. It could do better, of course, economically. But I think once everybody starts talking again, and I have to admit, when this first started on Facebook, I was angry. I was very angry. And as time has gone by, I've tried to take a different tact, and rather than react to everything, just act on what I feel, rather than trying to go with what everybody else thinks or doesn't think.
When you say when this all started on Facebook, do you mean the occupation months ago?
The occupation, yeah. I was angry because somebody came in here and says, everybody here is corrupt, and, well, I don't see anybody in their hometown talking to their officials. You know, the corruption isn't just here if it's here, and I don't think it is. But why should someone else come into my town and tell me that I don't know my rights, and tell me that I need to vote for somebody they want me to vote for and vote out somebody that I like? So yeah, I was angry.
Now, if I understand you correctly, you said that you see the future of Harney County's prosperity being not in increased cattle production, not in ranching, but in something related to the internet. Did I hear you correctly?
Kind of, yeah. I just don't think there's land around here that's going to support a whole lot more ranches, and there aren't things available for that. I would love to see it, but as the way things are changing in the world, in order to get the economy going, I would think it would have to be more electronic based. I'm not using the right words, but that kind of thing.
If I'm not mistaken, I heard a groan somewhere in the center of the room when you said that. What's your name?
My name's Erin Maupin. My kids are 6th generation ranchers now. I used to work for the BLM, and I don't think any of us ranchers have problems with our local BLM. In fact, I see a lot of friends and ex-coworkers and some family members in here. That's not what it's about, but I think one thing that hopefully this will make people realize is that the grazing rights we have are actually rights. They're not leases. We bought and purchased them with our ranch. The General Allotment Act of 1877, Stock Raising Homestead Act of 1916 Taylor Grazing Act of 1934 all set up that we do in fact have these rights. The Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976 guaranteed protection of prior rights established from these previous laws. So I believe in collaboration. I believe we can work together up until the point that our rights are being taken away. So when the government, and I'm not talking about people in this room, but when the bureaucrats in Washington, through pressure by environmental groups who use the Equal Access to Justice Act for frivolous lawsuits, when they put the pressure on the BLM and the Forest Service to cut these rights that have a dollar figure, we should at the very least be given a payment for those rights that are lost, which right now is about $175 in AUM if you were to go and purchase. And so I want people to know and talk about education. This is education that's been lost through different circumstances, and I want people to know we do have rights. It's no different than a water right. When I use my water right to irrigate my alfalfa, I don't get charged every time a drop of water hits the ground. I've already paid for those. And the fees that we pay to the Forest Service and the BLM are that. They're fees. They're administrative fees, and they're supposed to be put for to enhance our allotments. And so I want people to realize that, and I do believe we can collaborate, but we shouldn't collaborate our livelihoods and rights away, and I want to say that the refuge is a different situation.
Thank you. I'd love to hear more ideas of what you want Harney County to be in 10 years. Sir, we'll get a mic to you.
Yes, I would like to know first of all, a two-pronged question, what the economic impact of the occupation was on Harney County, and also I'd like to know, since according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, the federal government doesn't really even have the constitutional right to own lands. According to the 10th Amendment, the BLM, the FWS, and the Forest Service should not even exist. I'd also like to know if we were to turn over the lands in Harney County to the state, the individual ranchers, or to the county, how you'd foresee the economic impact there also.
Who were those 5 questions for?
Anybody. And they were just...
Okay. Does anybody want to answer those questions? Yeah, I'm just looking for... Oh, yes, okay. Ma'am, what's your name?
Patty Hodge. Well, the economic impact in this county, well, Burns and Hines, every business in this county did really well for the month of January. We were doing July numbers in January, which has never happened before. Motels were full, the grocery stores were full, the bars were full, restaurants were full. Rite Aid, Big R, King's, everybody did well. Gas stations. There was nobody I heard in this whole county that complained about the business they had.
Our business was down 40%.
Hold on. Now you can say it again. What's your name?
Our business, Jennifer Williams, Shepherd Graphics, and our business was down 40%. We came this close to closing the doors because we're a walk-in business pretty much, and we had nobody. We went down to skeleton crews, and we all but folded.
Why do you think there was such a drop in your business?
Because nobody was going downtown, and like I said, we're just downtown. We do a lot of printing for business cards and that kind of things, but as far as just the everyday foot traffic, if it wasn't for UPS and FedEx shipments, we would have been done.
Ma'am, what's your name?
I'm Cheryl Smith, and I had a question for the BLM people and even our sheriff. You know, a lot of people felt they had to leave town, you know, and I don't know, where did that, you know, who made that decision that they had to work from home, they had to leave town or any of that? But, you know, and it hurt some of the businesses. Yeah, you know, like Shepherd Graphics. I had a dream years ago to open a shop of my own here, but the economy won't support it. And I'm hoping that through education and the stuff that people are doing different now and asking the questions, the hard questions, you know, that, you know, who told them to leave?
Chad Carges from the refuge, from Fish and Wildlife Service. What was the reason?
That's part of the criminal prosecution, so I'm not allowed to talk about that, sorry.
What the unhappy murmurs in the audience, what do those mean?
I'd like to say something. The problem is, there's too much government, there's too much overreach, there's too much corruption. You get the government, everybody knows the government is wasteful, and it comes all the way down to the county level. That's why there's so much interest now in the county. The Hammonds got a raw deal. They're in prison for the second time for creating a fire that the BLM has had. They have evidence that they've created fires. Why aren't they in jail? They got a raw deal. Those people are sitting in jail right now for no reason. And the Bundys and all the Patriots, them too, they need to be let out of jail. Why are they being held like criminals? They are not criminals. They're trying to help create this, bring justice to this country. There is too much corruption in this country. And they're trying to educate people. And why are the people, why is the government trying to squeeze the life out of these people? Because they hit a nerve. How dare you? We the people, how dare you question the authority? Well, we the people are the authority, and we're going to take it back because this country has gone corrupt. The people in charge, they're corrupt, and it needs to be changed. And we want to change. Yeah.
How together do you all think this community is right now?
Not very.
The answer, without mics in people's mouths, maybe folks could hear on the air, is not very. Is that, just by a show of hands, is that more or less what, how many of you feel that way? Because we've talked a lot, you've talked a lot this hour about how one of the benefits of the occupation is that tensions that were below the surface before now are coming to the fore. People are talking about them, and there's value in talking. But obviously now we're hearing more of the divisions that still exist. How divided? How many of you think that the community is very divided right now today? Only about a third of the hands are up. The rest of you, how many of you think that you're more or less together somehow? Oh, not very many, very few hands. So then where does that leave the rest of you, the majority of people? If you're neither very divided nor very together, where are you?
We're working at it.
You're working at it.
We're working at it.
A lot of people are still in shock.
And one gentleman said a lot of you are still in shock. How many of you feel like, as a town, you're still in shock? Again, only a smattering. Well, we're going to leave this conversation here. I want to thank all of you for coming out and sharing your points of view. And I want to thank the folks at the fairgrounds for inviting us as well. If you missed any of our conversation, you can listen to the entire thing on our website, opb.org/thinkoutloud. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Our rebroadcast is every night at 8 p.m. Thanks very much for tuning in.
I would like to say, hey guys, hang on just a sec, please.
If people have to go, we can let them go. I mean, we're not going to hold them hostage.
Their feet don't make noise, but their mouths do.
Okay.
I would like to say that I think a lot of the problem in this community was communication and the lack of communication and the censorship of communication. If you have a huge issue in your community, you need to talk about it. You need to be able to discuss what's going on, and you need to be able to get people's opinions on both sides of the fence. And when you're censored and you can't even have a public meeting, you can't do that. And when you have your own courthouse fenced in with concrete barriers, and you have armed people that won't even allow you, I couldn't even go see the sheriff. I tried to see him several times, couldn't see him. With vehicles wandering around town that you had no idea who they were, blacked out windows, scaring people in the community. That stuff was coming from the federal government. And that kind of fear, I think, is probably what affected that business right there. I think that's what it was. People were very, very afraid. People were afraid. People weren't allowed to speak. I think it's very important, if you're going to have anything in your community to be productive, you have to let everybody be involved. I never agreed with the Bundy occupation, but I understood exactly what they were talking about. I'd like to say that whenever I went out there to try to get Ammon to leave, I didn't see any mess. I saw him cleaning things up. And I think it's very important that we all communicate. We're talking about education. As long as you're green, you grow. Once you're ripe, you rot. You should always, always, always try to keep learning. The Constitution is an extremely important document that needs to be followed, and it needs to be understood. And we have to be able to pay attention to what's going on. It's our fault that our country is in this situation that it is, because we've allowed it to happen. We need to be more involved. That's why there's more people in these meetings, is people want to know what the heck's going on so they can have a say-so in what's going on. Because things have been going on that nobody had any idea about. And when you talk about our federal lands, BLM's sign says managing your public lands. They're public lands, okay? And when you have public lands, I'm part of the public, and when you have roads being closed where you can't access these places anymore, what happens to the infirm, the people, the handicapped people that used to hunt in the same places forever and ever and ever, and now they can't because the roads are closed? There are a tremendous amount of problems that need to be addressed, but unless there's communication, that can't be done. Unless people can talk and communicate, it can't ever happen.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you can just yell it out.
Okay, not to beat a dead horse or anything, but about this appreciation dinner thing, some lady over there really snatched me up to the side, said she set up the appreciation dinner 2 weeks before LaVoy Finnegans' death. If the occupiers were so bad and they scared our community so much, law enforcement and federal agents were going to have a party with the refuge still occupied, but our town was so afraid of the occupiers, but we're going to have all our feds and all our law enforcement agents at a party 2 weeks before LaVoy Finnegan was shot. I just don't agree with that. Like everyone, all the newspapers you read, the town was so scared of the people at the occupiers, but yet they were going to have a party 2 weeks before LaVoy Finnegan was shot. I just want to understand that. Maybe I can't take the board side of it or something, but it just doesn't make any sense to throw a party while the refuge is still occupied. You have a job to do. If those people are that bad and that armed, you have a job to do as law enforcement to go stop them, not throw a party 2 weeks before you shoot a man.
Dave Ward didn't throw the party.
That's what I'm saying. He still was willing
He
to
was
go.
asked to the party, but he did not throw the party.
My point is the town is so scared of the occupiers, they still
We're
going
out
to throw
here
a party.
with the law enforcement. What are we going to be scared of?
At the party.
At the party.
Yeah, but they were just going to leave the occupiers. They were going to leave the occupiers at the restaurant to have a party.
Did they ever go down to the refuge?
Hey folks, we're gonna end this. I could, if you could do us a huge favor, if you don't mind, if you could take your chair and help us stack them, to put them back. There are a bunch of the